So let's get started talking about Kant. An answer to the question is Enlightenment. That's the full name of the piece that Kant published in response to the question, what is Enlightenment? Which was asked of the, I guess, of the general public, and especially a prominent intellectual. Kant was a very famous philosopher already by that time in Prussia. He's a German philosopher, but there's no Germany at this time. So it's Prussian, which is the largest and most powerful of the German-speaking states that became Germany in the 19th century. So it's a pre-packaged question, and this Kant was coming in. People, intellectuals at the time, also gave their answers, and Kant was just one of them. So, but why are they asking the question? I mean, well, the word enlightenment obviously has many meanings, but we associate it both with the notion of personal enlightenment, coming to some understanding, knowledge, some kind of state of spiritual or intellectual clarity. We also understand it as an historical phenomenon, either an ongoing historical process or a period of history, especially European and perhaps American history that we associate with the 18th century, the 1700s, the age of Enlightenment. And both of those things were current at Kant's time. There'd be an awareness that he was living in a period of this awareness, different from previous periods. He's trying to capture, in a certain sense, an historical phenomenon, the phenomenon of enlightenment, and of course also trying to define it. You may ask what we're reading it. This is obviously a class called the human person. This class about the philosophy of human nature. So these other aspects of Kant's essay are, of course, important to understand what he's getting at. But the most important thing for us, and this is the most important thing for all the readings that we do, to ask of each reading, how does this actually reflect human nature? That is, somewhere embedded, either explicitly or implicitly, each reading is an author's view about human nature, about what it means to be a human being, about what is most important to being a human being in some way or another. And so, for instance, if one's looking at a text like this, certain key words pop out at you, and I would say, for instance, on page 4, about 10 or 15 lines down, you see the expression human nature. And that's not an infallible rule that would mean that it's part of the text for us, but it's certainly a good indication that it's when the author explicitly mentions human nature that is probably an aspect of the text that will be quite important to us. A little bit farther down, about stuff from the bottom of page 4, you see the term mankind, which we would probably say humanity or humankind, meaning the same thing. Another indication that that's an important part of the text for us. So looking at this, we do want to get a sense of what it gets in general, what its purposes are in this essay, but more specifically, we want to understand what the implications are for the future. So let's take a look at the essay. He's interested in defining enlightenment, explaining the definition. I mean, that's the most prominent part of the text. And he begins by saying enlightenment demands emergence from self-incurred immaturity. So right away, you get a sense of how he's imagining enlightenment. Enlightenment, this notion of understanding, of consciousness, some sort of knowledge or clarity about things, is viewed in Kant's mind as a process of maturation, as a growing up process. Now, of course, we start out, each one of us, and perhaps the human race starts as inevitably being immature, not self-incurred immaturity, that's being young. Enlightenment, he says, is man's emergence, human beings' emergence from their self-incurred immaturity. Now, what's the difference between just being young and being, by definition, immature, and being a state of self-incurred, self-caused, responsible, self-responsible immaturity? Well, that's to choose to be immature. And Kant seems to be saying that to be unenlightened is to choose not to be enlightened, choose not to be mature. Why would we choose to do that? And he gives us some very good reasons in the beginning of this essay, explaining why somebody might voluntarily want to be immature, and that's because he says we are lazy. Being enlightened, being mature, would mean to take one's life in all its aspects in one's own hands. And there are, as he says in the second paragraph in the first page, it's so convenient to be immature. I have a book to have understanding, places me, a spiritual advisor, a conscience for me, a doctor to judge my diet for me, and so on. I do not make any efforts at all. I need not think so long as I can pay. Others will soon enough take the time judge over for me. Well, we face these decisions as grown-ups every day. Am I going to learn the basics of plumbing, or am I going to hire a plumber? Am I going to learn how to fix my car? Am I going to pay a mechanic? I mean, of course, be kind of an endless task, or maybe even impossible to learn all these things. He's saying that more, in terms of health, spiritual, religious state, and opinions, things that other people will do for us. They will take over if you give them what they want. These are things that grown-ups are supposed to take into as much as they practically possible for themselves. Now, of course, I think that it's clear that thinking in a more general sense than when you have to do your own plumbing, or your own wiring, or your own car repair, or even your own taxes and things like that. Basically, having the courage, he said, to in general think for oneself, to develop one's own opinions about things, and that's what the famous Latin motto is there in the first paragraph, sapere aude, dare to know. That is, have the courage, he says, to use your own understanding. That is, the human being who has that courage to use his or her own understanding in sort of figuring out what kind of place the world is and what the truth of things is. That person is the enlightened person, but that's very difficult to actually carry out for an individual to do that, to be in a position to responsibly begin to make one's own decisions about things. And he says that he's, in fact, there in the last on the first page, thus it's difficult for each separate individual to work his way out of the immaturity which has become almost second nature to him. That is, for individuals to become enlightened, this is a very difficult process. Not something easy to do on one's own, and I think that if we look back at our own educations, both inside and outside schools, to really depend upon other people to help us to achieve that kind of maturity. That's what we want to call enlightenment. And Kant is not just thinking of the individual in sense. It would seem most of the sentence is kind of thinking on the communal level of culture, civilization, and political community. And he signals that in the second page, in the first full paragraph, he says, there is more chance of an entire public enlightening itself. This indeed is inevitable if only the public concern is left in freedom. And here we really get, I think, closer to the themes that I want to explore, the way I want to use this text in terms of its reflection on what Kant is saying about who we are as human beings. So far, he said basically that we are, most of us, most of the time, pretty immature, and that is our own fault because we lack the courage to take the steps and think for things out. But in this last quote, the entire public enlightening itself, and that this process of enlightenment on the social or community, political or civilizational level is inevitable. It's quite an interesting thing I like to think about. And it's inevitable, he says, as long as the public is left in freedom, which may be the first big conceptual thing to think about in this class. Again, the notion of freedom. And what we'll see, I think, in Kant's thinking is that he's thinking of a very specific kind of freedom, not total and absolute freedom. We'll get to that in the next video. And that he's also thinking about a very definite, close relation between freedom and knowledge. That what we'll see is in Kant's mind that the reason that freedom is so important, and a specific sort of freedom, is because freedom is essential for the growth and progress of human knowledge. And when we get to that point, we really begin to see what Kant is saying about human nature. Let's take that up in the next video.